This is the Daily Tech News Show Weekend Edition. Got another Weekend Edition for you this week. And a special version this time because our producer, Amos, Anthony Amos, was able to sit down with one of the folks from Pison. You may remember me interviewing Pison recently about their fatigue tracking, some of the measurements that they do. They work a lot with people in baseball to help optimize things and decide like who's freshest and who's ready and that sort of stuff. And Amos shares a background with the manager of strategic partnerships at Pison. So they sat down to have a good old-fashioned confab about their shared experiences and how technology works into that and how that has informed the work at Pison. So take it away, Amos.
All right, I'm here with Michael LeNeave, the manager of strategic partnerships at Pison. And Mike, we're going to get into that part of it a little bit later, but you and I have an interesting common background of sorts.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Amos, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I am a retired Chief Warrant Officer from the United States Army. I retired out of Army Special Operations Command. I was the Director of Aviation Safety at the Army Special Operations Aviation Command. And with that position, came along with 22 plus years of flying experience, flew OH-58 Deltas and MH-47G Chinook helicopters. And yeah, I love talking aviation. I love talking safety, and I love talking maintenance. So let's get to it.
Well, you say maintenance. To remind the audience, those of you who might not know, I served in the Air Force for 24 years. I was aircraft maintenance the entire time in different roles between managerial and actually turning wrenches on the flight line, working F-16s, F-15s, C-130s, C-17s, C-141s, C-5s, basically everything in the Air Force inventory, and some Army, Navy, and British aircraft as well. During deployments, because when you're deployed, it's all hands on deck. You just get the job done, put the planes back in the air. So
it's funny that you say that, because we used to do that in Bagram. Like, we'd run across the airfield and grab tools and parts from anybody and everybody. It's like a swap meet over there, man.
Yeah. Because if the aircraft are on the ground, I've got to stop saying airplanes one day. It's better than just calling everything a jet, I guess. If the aircraft are on the ground, they're not doing anybody any good. So the whole mission is to get them in the air, whether you're flying them or you're maintaining them. The job is to get them in the air and get them functional. So, where all have you been deployed to, if you can tell me, other than
Yeah, sure. So my journey started way back when, 2001, before September 11th. So I joined the Army in June of 2001. Went through basic training and everything at Fort Benning, went to walk school or warrant officer candidate school at Fort Rucker, now Fort Novosel, Alabama. Got out of flight school and went to Korea. So I did my first 15 months, basically an overseas environment. Korea wasn't necessarily a deployment, but it wasn't exactly, it was a non-accompanied tour, if that made any sense to anybody out there. Yeah. No family, none of things like that. Went from Korea to Hawaii, and then I got into my first actual combat deployment, went to Iraq, 2006 through 2007, 15 consecutive months. The surge, right? So that was a really kinetic, highly active deployment. That was flying attack reconnaissance helicopters, the OH-58s. Came back to Hawaii, did another deployment with the 25th Infantry Division. So another 12 months to Iraq in 2009. Assessed for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Went to the 160th in 10, 11-ish. Got down to 3rd Battalion, 160th in Savannah, Georgia. And then that started the unique Special Operations deployment cycles of anywhere from 30 days to 60 days to 90 days, depending on what the mission was. And that was Afghanistan primarily, because the heavy assault MH-47s really earned their money in a place like Afghanistan. But we also did Iraq, and we also did other places. I'll just say Djibouti, and then I'll leave it at that. I've done a lot of different activities over water, over mountains, over desert, over other places. And it's challenging everywhere you go.
We have some commonalities there too, because I was in Korea twice. once at Kunsan, once at Osan. So the Kunsan one was unaccompanied. The Osan one was unaccompanied by choice. The Kunsan one, there was no choice. You just had to go. And I also spent about 4 years in Hawaii from 2000 to 2004. 2004 to 2008. There we go. 04 to 08, because I was in Okinawa from 2000 to 2004.
We overlapped in Hawaii then, because I got there in 05 and was there through 10 with 2 years in Iraq.
Was that out at Schofield?
Yes. Yeah. Wheeler Army Airfield. That's right. I lived in Honolulu, and I'd drive up.
I did the opposite. My wife and I lived in Mililani, and I drove down to Hickam.
Oh, nice. I did live in Pearl City, man. I was in Hawaii long enough to where I lived in multiple different places. Makakilo, Pearl City. I lived on North Shore. Man, I was all over the place. Like
I lived in Hickam. I lived in Hickam until I got divorced, and during the divorce, I moved out to Makakilo. Once the divorce finalized, I moved out to Aiea at the top of Aiea Loop Road up by the park. And then a while later, my wife and I got married. I moved in with her in Mililani. So yeah, lived all over the island too.
Shared past. I love it.
Yeah. And yeah, even with all that, we probably never ran across each other. The military is such a big and small place at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, well, having said all that, what was some of the technology that you used in your career that set a baseline on what you expect technology to do?
Yeah, so it's funny. Flying the OH-58 in the mid '80s, when they kind of rolled out that platform with the for people who don't understand what it is, it's a little helicopter. It looks like a news helicopter with a ball on top. And the ball was a big sighting system, thermal imaging system, and it had laser rangefinders and all this other stuff. Had the cool thing was it had two multifunction displays, so it was a glass cockpit, big deal.
Oh yeah.
So that was a big deal, in 2001, 2003.
For the record, it's still a big deal when they convert C5s to glass cockpits and stuff like that. I remember the 141 conversion to glass cockpits, and we're like, oh my gosh.
That's right. So, the Army just recently, moved away from Alpha Model 60s, and there's still some floating around out there, but the active duty Army, moved away, and those were not glass cockpits, all steam gauges. Anyway, so the technologies, when we got into theater and we started doing kinetic, things, one of the issues was you quickly realized in a single pilot helicopter with two pilots flying, but you only need one technically to operate the machine. So you had another guy kind of working the payload. You realized that everything in the helicopter was designed to kill you. So everything was designed to bring your attention inside. Everything was designed to make your life harder. There was nothing that was really, there was no autopilot, no things that were just you couldn't just fix the sight on something and keep it. It would hit stops and go crazy on you. And you had to bore sight it all the time and do all sorts of other stuff. So, it was just challenging, right? This 80s technology in a 2000 fight. And we started developing our own stuff. So put your head in this space. Here we are flying a $5 million helicopter in combat, launching a $60,000 missile off the side that rides a laser beam, right? But the way we would mark targets is we would take a Gatorade bottle, MRE heater and IR chem lights, throw them in the Gatorade bottle and kick them out so we could have a signature that showed up on the thermal imaging and you could see under your goggles. Because otherwise you could never potentially overlay those two things. You just couldn't find it. I wish my goggles looked and saw the same thing my sight saw. It's not the same. So you had to, it's challenging, right?
Oh, yeah.
So here we were with literally, we had Gatorade bottles duct taped with a water canister next to it, two chem lights. You'd snap those chem lights, throw the MRE heater to already be in the bottom. You drop some water in it, kick it out, and then you could see it come out like you would watch your sister ship fly over the target area. You'd see the thing fall out. You'd see it, and then you would start talking on from there. So he'd say, okay, from the marking device, head north 300 meters. Okay. You see the village? Yeah. Okay. Or you see the shed? Yeah, I got the shed. Okay. Left side of the shed. Okay. You see, there he is. Those are the guys. Like, holy crap, man. Just not like the video games, right? Like not like any of that. Meanwhile, our friends down the road in the 82nd Airborne that were flying the latest and greatest versions of the Apache at that time. So it was a Delta model Apache, but they had a new imaging system, and I can't remember exactly what that imaging system is called right now. But man, they could read a stop sign through their imaging system at like 3 kilometers, and we were like, "This isn't even fair, man." like you guys have that, and we're over here fighting with our muskets. Like, geez. So
that's definitely a low-tech solution to a high-tech problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then to kind of take that out forward, like, so eventually, you get into special operations, and the equipment's remarkable. I basically equated the transition from the OH-58 Delta to the MH-47 Chinook is basically getting a transition into a spaceship. It was that much technology. The ability of that aircraft, like the sight systems, the sight on the assault helicopter was 14 times better than the sight on the reconnaissance helicopter, which was crazy to me. But when we got over there and started doing that type of flying, some of the other things started coming present to us on the technology gap. When I became the director of safety, it started to become apparent to me that, we're kind of overlooking human performance in the aviation sphere. So if you think about it, like, you're familiar with airplanes and maintenance, there is a bazillion different monitoring devices on the machine. I mean, it can measure and tell you to a 10th of a percentage point or a 10th of a degree of what the engine's operating at, or the fluids are changing at, and all these other things. Nothing on the pilot, but the pilot is 80% of the accident problem. So 80% of the accident problem is human error. 100% of the monitoring systems are on the machine. We've got almost to the point where the machine doesn't fail you, right? Like, the machine is precisely tuned. It's going to give you the heads up, the warning, the timing to where you can get away from a potential catastrophic failure. We had a bad accident, and I had my own in 2016 where we knocked down some trees, coming off a C-17, went right to a mission, in a fatigue state. But at that moment in time, like, it just wasn't something we'd think about. It was never a card you'd throw down. It was never in your sphere of even consideration. After the accident, we were like, man, I don't know if we were right. Like, should we have done that mission? It wasn't a critically important mission to what was going to happen in Afghanistan. So it wasn't that. And that kind of started my wheels turning as a professional aviator, senior warrant officer at the time, going to be a director of safety, like being a safety officer. Like, wait a minute, I think we're missing part of the equation here, which is the human in the aviation safety spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward, we go to Djibouti. We're about to take off and go over water, and it's nighttime. It's dark out there, right? You've been to the desert, you know the deal when the sun goes down and there's no moon up. Man, it's really dark.
Yeah, it's great for astrophotography if you happen to have a decent camera and night off.
That's right. So we're about to depart. The airplane just got built up. Our mechanics that built the airplane, unfortunately, they didn't get the same rest cycle we got, right? Like, aviators are under, or flying crew are under a crew rest policy.
Yep.
Not that maintenance people aren't, but at that moment in time, that wasn't the focus. The focus was a timeline, get that airplane up so we can go do this mission. And we took off, and the air data computer was not correctly wired to the aircraft. So all of our instrumentation, we basically went to a 30 degrees nose down, inverted look, lost airspeed. Now we're looking out at the ocean, okay? Black night ocean, no horizon, no visible horizon. So you're trusting your instruments. And that was probably one of the few times that I've been in a helicopter that I literally felt like I was upside down. Like, my whole head proprioceptive system went crazy. Wow, jerked on the controls kind of thing. And what ends up happening is we turn back, catch the lights, and realize, okay, all of our instruments are wrong. So we turn around, come back, land, air data computers improperly assembled or hooked up. And okay, so what caused that? Was it fatigue necessarily? Maybe, maybe not. But I will say that the human wasn't given the adequate rest to perform at a high level to do a delicate job, right? Like, to do a very highly technical job. And then finally, the last kind of event that really put a button on it for me was when I was the director of safety. I was in the seat for about, 3 months, and we had a crash overseas. A pilot was killed. It happened, in the dark of night, 3 a.m. kind of thing. Everyone involved in the accident investigation had a feeling of, this feels like fatigue, but in accident investigations, if you don't have objective data that supports that finding, that's not a thing. Like we're not going to guess. So ultimately, all this led me to, we need technology that can quantify the human. We don't have that.
I know as a maintainer, there were times, we've talked about work rest cycles. The work cycle is 12 hours on the flight line working. The hour you do turnover beforehand and checking tools out, the hour or so you do paperwork and turning tools in, things like that afterwards, that doesn't count. It can turn into a 16-hour day very easily. Whereas, you're only on the flight line for 12 hours, so therefore your duty day was only 12 hours. That's on the maintenance side, and there are some hardcore maintainers that go out there for 16 hours a day. At one point, I was working 12 hours a day, plus turnover on the front, plus turnover on the back end, 6 days on, 1 day off, and we had so many aircraft on our flight line at Okinawa when after 9/11 happened, we were shuffling everything through. It was insane. Everybody was tired, and we kind of just muscled through. But you are working on ways to quantify that fatigue and be able to look at it objectively. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are you doing at Pison that's really quantifying that for us?
Sure. So, we went on the journey, so to speak, in 2018. I was still in active duty at the time. I was working for a 1-star directly and indirectly for the 3-star commander at USASOC. And the pursuit was, how do we quantify fatigue in operations so that we can identify risk, mitigate and assess and do the right things to appropriately protect against it? Not stop the mission, just it's much better to know and understand the risks at hand than to put our heads in the sand and pretend like they aren't there. So we pursued all kinds of wearable technologies from back then. And we did a deep dive with the Army Aeromedical Research Lab on the scheduling tools and all sorts of other different functionalities that were available to you to potentially protect against fatigue. Well, the problem was none of them gave us a quantified number that we could make a risk decision off of. They give you an idea. They'll say, yeah, you spent so much time in bed, or yeah, you slept so much. But sleep is really individualized. There's an inter-individual resilience inside each person that's different. So I can't use a broad scale wearable technology that doesn't have an active testing component that I can individualize the scores and really trust what's being said. All of the literature backs up reaction time testing, psychomotor vigilance testing. So we wanted to get something to that effect. Unfortunately, I got medically retired, so we had to stop that pursuit in the active duty. But I met with Pison, and I met Dexter Ang, who is the founder or the co-founder, and we discussed this problem set. And the uniqueness of the technology that Pison has is a surface-based EMG device that measures electrical signals at the wrist, and then using gesture control technologies that they developed over 6 years of working with the Department of Defense. They now have a mechanism that's all internal to the device on the body that can measure your reaction time and even quantify basically your decision space, right? So a stimulus occurs on the device. The electrical signal starts to build in your hand. That's what the surface EMG reads. And then you have a threshold of movement that breaks through and basically says, okay, that was your thought time. And now is your electromechanical delay, which is the delay between I'm going to execute, the electricity is building, and the muscle's activated. Super sensitive, super precise, really technical piece of equipment. The simple answer is we can quantify reaction time like nobody else. And because I can do that, I can now give an individual score to an individual person and get basically a snapshot in time of their readiness based on their performance. So an example, you may be an average 200 millisecond responder. What does that mean to you and me? Not a whole hell of a lot, right? So, but the reality is, if I know you're a 200 millisecond responder and I've got a critical mission coming, and now all of a sudden you're scoring 300 milliseconds, well, now that's a massive change and a massive degradation in your normal operating condition. That alerts me as a commander or as someone in charge with risk authority to say, okay, I need to put up some barriers because you're not exactly what I expect normal to look like today. Doesn't mean you don't do your job. Doesn't mean you're bad, you're a threat or any of that. It just means, you know what? Maybe we have an extra person. Maybe you don't do this specific task that's really important. Maybe we don't work in these weather conditions. That's it. And then from there, you're making a better decision, preventing that opportunity for this snapshot in time, reaction time issue, cognitive state from imparting a negative outcome on the mission.
So the big key acronym when I was in was ORM, Operational Risk Management, and it transferred right as I was getting out to like airmanship or crewmanship or whatever. I wasn't really, I was already on my way out, so I wasn't into learning that aspect of it. So I'm gonna refer things to as in ORM terms. When you're looking at, say you have a mission to do, whatever that mission is, whether it's flying cargo from here to there or dropping paratroopers or, actually being the guy on the ground going for Osama bin Laden, whatever the case is, when you have a mission, you have to look at the parameters of the mission and you have to identify, well, if you're good at it, you'll identify limiting factors, you'll identify things you can control, things you cannot control, what human factors might be involved. And that's usually your biggest source of trouble is the human factors. Where can my people mess up? Where can their equipment fail them to where they don't have what they need? The actual physical people are a huge part of any time you're looking at possible failure routes. Machines don't fail that often. People fail every day, a little bit here and there. So where in the ORM cycle would your technology go in? Is it something that's going to be, baselined and then continuous, or is it going to be baselined and then every day after a shift or in the middle of shift? Like, how does that fit into, because I know like maintainers, they can't wear wristbands and things like that on the flight line. So that's a barrier right there. So where does the Pison technology fit into the actual duty cycle of the troops?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about the roadmap a little bit, right? So right now, today, what can Pison do for aviation safety right now? Right now, I can absolutely baseline and quantify risk associated to each individual involved in the aviation system. So the way that we would do that is essentially conduct a pre-work evaluation, right? So you show up to work, you're doing your paperwork, you're checking out your tools, bam, you take our test. It's a quick on-the-body cognitive test. It's the PVT. It's a 3-minute test. You're sitting there, you're doing a reaction to the light, boom, you're done. Take your watch off, walk away. That essentially is your reading at the start of the day. And ideally, we would take one at the end of the day. So as you turned in your tools, take another test so that commanders and decision makers can see what kind of degradation we're having across the duty day. Now, that's not something you would need holistically every day for the rest of your work life. That is to start to build that picture and have a better understanding of what the metrics are telling you. The roadmap part of it is as we move forward, some of the great things that the device does is we have super precise sleep metrics. We have heart rate variability. We have all of the things, physiology metrics that most people are accustomed to seeing. And now you're going to lay body metrics with mind metrics. So imagine how much more powerful a reaction time test or some form of assessment, cognitive state assessment is when the same device is also measuring your sleep. So it's determining that you're getting restorative sleep or not getting restorative sleep because there's an attachment to what your mind is doing. So the peripheral nervous system feeds our sleep metric, and that sleep metric becomes more powerful. That's a very unique thing that only our devices provide.
And this would work for basically anybody in any situation, but especially those in high risk, high danger jobs, pilots, maintainers, infantry, things like that, where you can really see how their cognitive decline goes throughout the day. Would this also be something that could be used like after an accident? So say there's an incident, whether it's an aircraft incident, a ground incident, whatever else, you could take people and go through and have this done kind of quickly and see where their cognitive, abilities are at the time.
Sure. So something to think about is we're real accustomed in military aviation and aviation in general. We're very accustomed to lagging indicators, right? We have historical trends. We know the maintenance of the aircraft. We know how many hours were available on it. We know how many hours were available on this specific part. We know when a pilot was due for their flight physical and that kind of stuff. What we don't have is we don't have a whole lot of predictive analytics. What we can do with our testing metrics, right, and with our testing capability is we can start to predict out. So you can see what you're going to look like in the next 24 to 48 hours based on your individual test scores and your individual metrics. Now, you take that to an accident sequence. If I was, as an accident investigator, were to pull the data sets for 2 pilots involved in an accident and I had Pison available to me, I could go back and look historically. What are they ebbing and flowing as with their circadian rhythm? How often were they in a fully mission capable state, a partially mission capable state, or a non-mission capable state, right? Those things matter. And then I could look at, okay, the day of the flight, they looked like this. They were X percentage degraded or not. The week before that, they were in this position. And I could start to build the picture to say, if I was going to do the human factors classification, I could start to look at that and go, your scheduling sequence set the table for these aviators to be in a degraded state, and fatigue was a factor. Or I can absolutely rule fatigue out. And that's critical because right now, the way accident investigations are going, when we have a human error accident, I want you to kind of in your mind picture an accident investigator with a dart in his hand, throwing a dart at a dartboard, but there's a cloud, a human error cloud in front of the dartboard, and they're hoping they hit the dartboard. You know, if we can start to take fatigue and pull it out of the cloud, now you can get in. Was it truly a training accident? Was it truly a failure to provide the right resources? Was it truly a crew management? Like, was that the meat of it? Because fatigue affects so many systems. Mm-hmm. It affects your reaction time. It affects your decision making. It affects your risk acceptance in your own thought processes. It affects how you communicate with your partners and with your teammates. So you can say communication was the failure, but what's at the root cause of that communication failure? You know, normally Joe's a great pilot. He talks to me all the time. I don't know. He was in a bad mood today. Well, because he was up all night with his kids. You know, or because he's in a fight with somebody, or because he's stressing about something, or some other life events happen. His mom's in the hospital.
Or who knows? A diesel generator right outside his tent where he couldn't sleep.
Right. Like, who knows? The Mad Mortar Man was bombing us all day, and nobody got sleep in the daytime. So here we are. Like, you don't know, and there's no way to know if we're not measuring it. That's why it's so critical we start catching some human metrics.
Yeah. How sensitive is it to where, can your results be affected by things such as nicotine, caffeine, other stimulants? Are those adjusted for or accounted for?
So here's the cool. This is what I think is really cool about this device, and this is why I think it's primely
because you know the military is run on caffeine and nicotine. Like that's what fuels America's war effort.
Absolutely. Like I had cases of Rippets in the aircraft, right? Like that's how you lived. Exactly right. Story for another time. So yes, the point is this: the psychomotor vigilance test and reaction time testing, and especially the neurophysiology at the wrist with your electrical signals, the precision inside that, we can see impairment. We can't tell you why you're impaired. We can't tell you what's impairing you, but we can see a degradation. And the cool part about this is if you did have someone who was having some kind of substance problem, or you did have someone who was having some kind of anxiety or depression problem, if you did have someone who had some kind of sleep problem, we're not going to be able to see any of that. We're just going to be able to tell the decision maker in real time, you probably want extra set of eyes on this soldier. Or you may want to cycle this soldier into a rest cycle. Something else. You may want to do something different. That's it. This is strictly operationally focused. This is strictly an ability for the commander to know they are putting the best team on the battlefield right now today. Go and be confident.
Nice. Yeah, because, different people react different ways. I know in some of the hot button situations I've been in where 2 hours of sleep was fine. And, it didn't matter. I could do that for a couple of days in a row. But when you don't have that kind of outside stimulus, sometimes 6 hours, and I'm like, no, I need another 6 hours because I'm not functioning right today.
No, that's right. And I really I love that train of thought, because one of the things we've discovered, we've done some things with the military already, and we started to see resilient versus non-resilient populations. And what that means is there are people in the United States military that are ready to do their job and willing to do it, and they'll never tap out. But some of them are not made for the cycle shifts that they're going to be put through. And those people, it doesn't mean they can't serve. It doesn't mean they're not worthy service people. We need to use them. We need to put them in the schedules that fit them. And then we have another population that is absolutely resilient to all the jerking around and, hey, daytime, nighttime, whatever. Well, that's your population to play with, to do that. They can sustain that. And we can see those two populations.
That's phenomenal. Now, how much testing have you actually done with the military for this specific kind of thing? Like, is it pretty extensive? Are you just tapping the surface, or
I will say for the precise reaction time risk assessment piece, this is something that's, I won't say it's new. We've been working for about a year with some military partners. The company, though, the device, Pison, has been working with the Department of Defense for 7 years. So understand, like, all of the work they were doing up to this point was building gesture control and doing different technology interfaces. And that learning is what got us to this point where we have this superior device to do this other thing that was out of the perspective at first. And now it's like, oh, hey, look, you can do this. This is awesome. So if you were to say, like, specifically, probably a year. Indirectly, 7 years.
All right. Now, but this isn't just a far-flung object, a technology that's just out there that you're still trying to grab onto. You actually have operational, functional devices for sale.
That's correct. Our devices are for sale there, and as a matter of fact, we've partnered with Timex. And here's the thing: we've got a great partner in Timex that's building hardware for us. We are a sensor and data analytics company. We're a data company, right? A physiology type of company. We're not a watchmaker. Timex is really good at making watches. We've made watches, we have them, but we know going forward, it's our capability and our science embedded in a really good production model watch is what we want, right? And that's what everybody wants. So we've partnered with Timex, and that's who we're talking to the United States military with right now about, hey, what is it precisely you want to measure on the human so that you can build warrior biometrics and that that your service people are being taken care of and they're fit to fight right now.
That's awesome. Where can people find more information about everything we've talked about today?
Yeah, sure. Pison.com, obviously. There you go. That's the cool website. We do have more stuff coming out very soon. We are in some studies that I think are going to, once they get released and the findings are peer reviewed and all those things, I think are really going to turn some heads, especially in the United States military. So there is going to be a lot more news to come here at the end of 2025 and going into 2026.
Excellent. This can be, sounds awesome. I can't wait to see it in my own hands and see how well it works and find out, maybe I don't need 12 hours of sleep a day.
That's precisely right. There's a lot of people that function very highly on, and to your point, that's why the technologies we were looking at in 2018 failed, because we had high octane populations that could function just fine on 6 hours of sleep. They didn't need the 7 to 9. 7 to 9 is the prescribed number. That's great. I don't know about you, man, but how often were you deployed and got 7 to 9 hours of sleep? That never happened.
Well, good luck with any of that.
Yeah, never.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on and explaining all this to us and talking some story. Appreciate that.
Hey, thank you, Amos. I appreciate your time.
Big thanks to Michael LeNeave for contributing to the show on this weekend. Big thanks to Amos for doing that interview. It would not have been nearly the same level and quality of information if I had done it. So if you liked hearing Amos in the interviewer's seat, please let me know. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. That is it for the weekend edition. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back for the regular briefings on Monday. Talk to you then.